If you're like me and you got your first SSR and it was not what you wanted, or you don't know how to build a team around the weapon you got, then this video is for you. I'll be explaining things to consider when building a team early on so that you can work around any weapon and have an easier time going through the earlier game content. It's Adrox and this is Tower of Fantasy Basic Team Building Guide. There are a couple of things to consider, starting off with Shatter and Charge. If you look at the weapons detail panel, you would notice that there is the ability section, which has Shatter and Charge. Starting off with Shatter, if you encounter enemies in the world, you would see that apart from their health bar, you would see that certain enemies have a white bar underneath them. This is a shield. According to the detailed description, enemies with shields can block 50% of the damage they receive, thus increasing the amount of time and effort to kill them. Shatter Proficiency, which is the stat over here, shows how well a weapon shatters shields. So certain weapons are better at shattering than others. As you can see here, I have the Chakram from Shiro, and I have the Pummeler here from NA. If we look at King's Scythe, you would see that he has a better shatter. He has 12.5. Next up is Charge. When battling, you will see this hexagon meter fill up around your weapon. This is your discharge skill, and when it is filled up, you can then switch to that weapon and use that discharge skill. The rate at which the weapons get filled up is determined by the weapon you're currently using. As an example, if I use my hammer to get weapon charge, it is considerably slower than when I use my bow. Certain weapons, again, are better at charging than the others. As you can see here, I have Bailing's bow, which has 10 charge. If you look at the negating cube from Zero, you see that he has 13 charge. In general, you would want to have a weapon that can charge your discharge skills. In my case, I have Bailing's bow, and a weapon that could break shields fast for a well-balanced team comp, which for me are Shiro's Chakram, and also NA's Pummeler. Next thing to consider is character stats. Under abilities, you can see here that each weapon gives out different stats. Now, if you go to the character sheet or the character panel here, you would see the current stats that you have from the weapon comp that you have equipped. A quick note though, this does not matter early on. But if you find yourself getting killed easily, you might want to get a weapon that gives resistance or more HP. Or if you're lacking damage, you might want to get a weapon with higher attack or crit. Now, I won't be giving you specific stats to try and get, as this is just a basics guide. Plus, early on in the game, you wouldn't really need to worry about it as much. Also, keep note, as you progress through the game, at level 20, you will unlock matrices that could give you extra stats. More on that on a future video. Next thing to consider is Weapon Resonance. This is unlocked at level 19, and it gives yourself certain bonuses when active. These are determined with your equipped weapon types, which you could see over here. This symbol for tank or defense, this symbol for DPS, and this symbol for support/healer. First resonance, we have Balance. This activates if you have 3 different weapon types equipped. It gives you 5% increased damage and 20% increased shatter and healing effect. In co-op, another 20% is added to the final damage and damage reduction. It is generally better to go for the next resonance effects though, especially when battling bosses or doing co-op content, as the effects are much stronger with speciality. But if you're just starting out and want to feel the weapons and which speciality you would pick, then having a balanced team early on is okay. Next up, we have Fortitude for tank mains. This activates when you have 2 defense weapons equipped. It increases your damage reduction by 25%, shatter by 60%, and aggro by 800%. In co-op play, damage reduction is boosted to 20%. In co-op, by the way, aggro is used in determining which of your teammates is getting focused on by the enemy. Of course, tanks are better to get aggro for they won't die easy. Up next, we have Attack, 2 DPS weapons equipped. Increases your final damage by 10%, and in co-op, further increases it to 40%. This resonance allows you to dish out as much raw damage as you can, but makes you a bit squishy and doesn't give as much utility as the other weapon resonance. Lastly, we have Benediction with 2 support type weapons equipped. This increases your healing by 100% plus another 100% in co-op play. Healers are essential, especially for boss fights, as they can get very difficult even earlier ones. Some of this game's content focuses on co-op or team events like raiding bosses and doing dungeons, and these resonance effects would give a big boost on your co-op team's synergy. Another thing to consider, Weapon elements. There are enemies in the game that have resistances and weaknesses to certain elements. Having diversity in your weapon choices would allow you to adapt with the enemies with these resistances and their weaknesses. Another thing are puzzles or items in the game that require you to have certain elements to collect or break. Although in my case, I don't have fire element on my weapons, but when I'm exploring, looking for chests, I exchange my bow to the fireball for ease of collection, even though the only fire element that I have is an R and is not really upgraded. The last thing on the list of considerations are weapon passives and or advancement synergy. There are certain weapons that give specific passive skills that boost other weapons. For example, we have here Nemesis, with her elemental resonance, giving extra damage to other Volt weapons. She is good paired up with another Volt DPS weapon. You could also consider weapon skills that are unlocked by advancements, such as NA's Pummeler normal attack stun, unlocked at 5 stars. Now, this is just an example, but if you put down a skill that deals damage over time within an area and you want to lock down that enemy in that area and you have the pummeler at 5 stars, then that is a good combo to do. Now, I won't be going through any more specific synergies, maybe in a future video, but those are the things you might want to consider when choosing weapons you would use for your early game experience. Another good thing to note is that upgrading your weapons are really expensive later on in the game. So I would suggest leveling up your weapons to maybe 30 or even 40 if you are having a hard time clearing out content. And then once you find the weapon that you really want, or if you're planning to get a weapon in the meta, then you could level that one up even further. So in my case, by the way, my first and only SSR is Shiro's Chakram, which I didn't really like to get. I would have loved to get Crow's daggers, but this is what the game gave me. And so I decided to build around it. And I looked at the charge of the Chakram and it's only 6. And I was like, I need a weapon that could charge. So I paired it up with Bailing's bow, which has 10 charge. And then I looked at my stats. So this is the 2 weapons that I have. I looked at my stats and I was like, oh, I have low resistance and relatively low health. So I chose NA's Pummeler. And I also really like how this weapon works because you can bonk. And looking at the character stats, I was satisfied with it. And so that's my team comp right now. Or that's my weapon comp right now. But yeah, all that being said though, choose the weapon you enjoy and have fun in the game. By the way, I would love to know if you want more guides like this. And if yes, you might want to consider subscribing and liking that video. And I also stream on Twitch. If you have questions, you can hang out with us there. Links in the description. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you understand some of the weapon systems. And don't forget to remember, stay curious. Goodbye.